The world woke up to another shocking revelation from Yaman, but this time, it wasn't about fame, career, or his love life. It was about family. During a candid, unfiltered interview, Ken said words that stopped both fans and the media in their tracks. "There's something I've kept private for years," he confessed softly. "Something about Sara, something even Demet never knew." The audience gasped. For the first time in months, the charismatic actor's confident smile disappeared. There was no charm, no defense mechanism, just honesty. Within hours, every entertainment outlet across Italy and Turkey was ablaze with headlines. Yaman's family secret shocks fans. And what did he reveal about Sara, and why was Demet speechless? But this wasn't just another gossip story. What he said next made it clear, this was personal. "I've always protected the people I care about," he continued, looking down for a moment. "Even when it meant being misunderstood. Sara was part of something my family never wanted to talk about publicly. But she deserves the truth to be told." The interviewer hesitated, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Are you saying there's a family connection between you and Sara Bluma?" Can's eyes lifted. He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, in a tone barely above a whisper, he said, "Let's just say, she was closer to my family than anyone ever knew." The audience gasped again. The studio went silent. Back in Istanbul, Demet Özdemir was watching the live broadcast in her living room. Her phone buzzed endlessly, journalists, friends, even her manager calling, wanting her reaction. But she couldn't move. She just sat there, eyes fixed on the screen. "Closer to his family," she repeated under her breath. What does that even mean? For years, Demet had known bits and pieces about Can's family, his struggles, his relationship with his parents, the things he never shared with the public. But this? This was something completely new. Her assistant entered the room, nervous. "Demet, everyone's asking for a comment. They're saying Sara might be." "Don't," Demet interrupted sharply. "Not yet." She leaned forward, turning the volume up as Can's voice filled the room again. "I've stayed silent for too long," he said. "Sara deserves to be seen not as a rumor, not as a mystery, but as a person who has always been part of something much bigger than people imagine." The interviewer pressed again. "Can you explain what you mean by that?" Can smiled faintly. "All I'll say for now is that sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about promises. And Sara was part of a promise my father made before he died." The audience murmured, confused and emotional. Even the host looked taken aback. "A promise?" Ken nodded slowly. "A promise to protect her, no matter what." "Back home," Demet whispered, "he never told me that." The interview ended, but the world was already spinning. Social media exploded with theories. Some fans claimed Sara was adopted into the Yaman family. Others speculated she was connected to Can's late father through a secret project. But the one thing everyone agreed on, the look on Can's face wasn't acting. It was real. Demet scrolled through her phone, her heart pounding. One comment caught her attention: if he made a promise, who was he protecting, Sara or Demet? For the first time in years, Demet realized there were still corners of Can's world she had never been allowed to see. The day after the interview, the entire country was buzzing. Every news site, talk show, and gossip blog was dissecting Yaman's words. Some called it the confession of the year, others said it was the most vulnerable moment of his career. But one question echoed louder than the rest: who exactly was Sara to Can's family? Cameras had already surrounded Sara Bluma's home in Rome. Reporters waited outside for a statement, microphones ready, flashlights cutting through the cold morning light. But Sara didn't speak. She stayed inside, blinds drawn, phone switched off. The truth was, she was just as shaken as everyone else. Inside her apartment, she rewatched the interview, her eyes locked on Can's face. "A promise," she whispered, her voice trembling. He actually said it. For years, Sara had lived with that secret, a bond that wasn't romantic, but deeply personal, woven into the past of Can's late father, Adnan Yaman. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Demet sat in her kitchen with her laptop open, reading the reactions online. Some fans were defending Can, calling his honesty brave. Others accused him of manipulating emotions to gain sympathy. But what struck her most were the theories, wild stories about Sara being adopted, or being related to someone in Can's family. None of it made sense. Demet's friend and assistant, Elif, entered cautiously. "You've seen the news, right? They're saying Sara might have been like a sister figure to him. Or worse, the daughter of someone his father once," Demet interrupted softly. "Stop." She closed the laptop and took a deep breath. "Everyone's guessing, Elif. No one knows the truth. Maybe not even him." But deep down, something inside Demet told her this wasn't a publicity stunt. The way Can had spoken, the sadness in his eyes, it reminded her of the nights he'd avoid certain topics, especially when she'd ask about his childhood. He always changed the subject, deflecting with humor or silence. Now, that silence had meaning. That evening, a new update shook the internet. A vintage photo surfaced on social media, a blurry, faded picture of a young Can standing next to his father, and a little girl with curly hair holding his hand. The caption read, "Who is the girl in this forgotten photo of Can Yaman's family?" The resemblance to Sara was undeniable. The internet went wild. Comments flooded in within minutes. "That's her. That's Sara when she was a child. So they've known each other for decades? What's the real story?" When Demet saw the photo, her heart dropped. The image told a story she never expected. Sara had been there all along, hidden in the quiet corners of Can's past. Hours later, Can's management team released a short statement. "Mr. Yaman has chosen not to elaborate further on personal matters. He asks for respect and understanding for all parties involved." But the silence only fueled curiosity. That night, Sara finally broke her own. On her Instagram story, she posted a single line over a black background: "He kept his promise." The entire internet exploded. Fans connected the dots instantly. This was the promise Can had mentioned on live television. Demet saw it too. Her hands trembled as she held her phone. "He kept his promise," she repeated softly. She sat in silence for a long moment before whispering, "Then what promise did he make?" The realization hit her. She had fallen in love with a man whose past she never fully understood. And that past was now staring back at her, unfolding before millions of eyes. Later that night, Demet opened her messages and scrolled through old conversations with Can. One line, sent years ago, stood out: "There are things I can't talk about yet. But one day, you'll understand why I am the way I am." She had ignored it back then, thinking it was just one of his moods. But now, she understood. And as the night deepened, the truth that connected Can, Sara, and his father was beginning to surface, a truth that would soon change everything. The photo that spread like wildfire across social media became the turning point of everything. That old, faded snapshot, Can Yaman, his father Adnan, and a small girl who looked strikingly like a young Sara Bluma, had done more than spark curiosity. It had opened the door to a story no one had ever told. By morning, the entire media world was chasing answers. Who took the picture? Where was it from? And most importantly, why had Can hidden it for so long? In a quiet part of Rome, Sara sat at her kitchen table staring at the image on her phone. It was an echo of a memory she had spent her whole life trying to bury. "I remember that day," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He gave me that bracelet." Her phone vibrated, an unknown number calling. She hesitated before answering. "Sara," the voice said. Calm, deep, familiar. "Can." There was a pause before either of them spoke again. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said quietly. "I did," she replied. "And so did the world." "I didn't mean for that to happen," he said. "But maybe it's time they know." Sara closed her eyes. "It's not just your story, Can. It's mine too." Meanwhile, in Istanbul, Demet was glued to her television. News anchors were replaying clips of Can's confession side by side with the viral photo. Every commentator had their own theory. One anchor claimed Sara was Adnan Yaman's goddaughter. Another said she was the child of someone Adnan had once saved. Every story seemed more unbelievable than the last. But Demet didn't care about rumors. What hurt her was the realization that the man she thought she knew so well, the man she had shared her deepest moments with, had lived with a truth so heavy, he couldn't even tell her. She thought back to the nights when he'd fall silent mid-conversation, staring into space. When she'd ask what was wrong, he would just smile and say, "Some things are better left in the past." Now, that past had come crashing into the present. That afternoon, a journalist managed to track down someone who had once worked with Can's father. The man, old and frail, agreed to talk. "Adnan Yaman was a good man," he said. "There was a car accident outside Izmir, a woman and her husband died instantly, but a little girl survived. Adnan brought her to the hospital and never left her side. The authorities couldn't find any relatives. He promised to look after her until she was adopted. That girl was Sara Bluma." The footage aired everywhere. Suddenly, everything made sense. The promise. The connection. The secrecy. Demet watched the report with tears in her eyes. "So that's what he meant," she whispered. "A promise to his father, to protect her." Hours later, Sara broke her silence again. This time, she posted a childhood photo, the same one that had gone viral, and wrote, "He kept his promise. And now, I will keep mine, to tell the truth." The next day, she sat down for her first interview. The host asked her gently, "Sara, can you tell us about your connection to the Yaman family?" Sara took a deep breath. "I owe them my life. When I was 6 years old, I lost my parents in an accident. I would have died that night if it weren't for Mr. Adnan Yaman. He took me in, cared for me, and made sure I was safe. I grew up believing I was a burden, but he treated me like his own." She paused, her voice breaking. "Can and I grew up like siblings. He protected me, just like his father protected me. That's the truth the world never knew." The studio went silent. The interviewer's eyes widened. "So all those rumors about a romantic connection," Sara shook her head. "People always need a story. But this wasn't about love in that way. It was about loyalty. Family. Gratitude." As the segment aired, the entire internet exploded again, but this time with respect, not scandal. Hashtags like #ThePromiseKept and #FamilyBeyondBlood trended worldwide. Fans wrote messages of support, calling it the most human thing Can Yaman has ever shared. And somewhere in Istanbul, Demet sat quietly, her phone in her lap, staring at the image of Can and Sara from years ago. Her heart ached, not from jealousy, but from admiration. "He never told me," she whispered, because it wasn't his secret to tell. That night, as the truth finally came to light, Can walked through the streets of Rome unnoticed. For the first time in a long time, there were no cameras, no reporters, just peace. He stopped at a small cafe, ordered a tea, and scrolled through his phone. A new notification appeared, a message from Demet. "I understand now. And I'm proud of you." He smiled softly, his eyes glistening under the dim street lights. For once, the world wasn't gossiping about who he loved or what he'd done wrong. They were talking about the kind of man he had become, one who honored his father's promise, no matter the cost. And somewhere deep down, Demet knew that this truth, though it had surprised her, had also reminded her of why she had fallen for him in the first place. The next few days felt like a storm that had finally calmed. The truth was out, no more guessing, no more tabloid lies. The world now knew that the bond between Can and Sara wasn't scandal or secret romance, but a promise rooted in tragedy and kindness. Still, the emotional wave his confession had caused refused to fade. In Istanbul, Demet Özdemir sat on her balcony, scrolling through endless headlines. Each one showed Can's face beside Sara's, this time not with sensationalist captions, but with warmth and empathy. Yaman's promise to his father melts hearts, Sara Bluma reveals the truth, family beyond blood. For once, the media wasn't tearing him apart. They were celebrating him. She smiled faintly. Finally, they're seeing who he really is, she whispered. Just then, her phone buzzed, a message from a number she hadn't seen pop up in years. Can, I didn't mean to surprise you like that. But I guess I surprised myself too. Demet stared at the screen for a long time. Her heart raced, her fingers trembled slightly. She wanted to reply, but words felt too small for what she was feeling. Eventually, she typed back, Demet, you didn't surprise me. You reminded me. He replied almost instantly. Can, of what? Demet, of why you always stayed quiet when the world wanted noise. There was a long pause. Then another message appeared. Can, I'm back in Istanbul tomorrow. I think, it's time we talk. Demet set the phone down, her breath catching. The years of silence between them suddenly felt both heavy and light, heavy because of what they'd lost, light because maybe, just maybe, this was their chance to finally talk without the shadows of the past between them. The next evening, Istanbul's sky glowed in shades of gold and violet as Can landed at the airport. Paparazzi waited, but he ignored them. No smiles, no comments, just determination in his eyes. He went straight to the television studio where he was scheduled to appear for a final follow-up interview about his confession. What he didn't know yet was that fate had one more surprise for him. Inside the studio, the host was preparing for the live broadcast. Can, thank you for agreeing to speak again, she said as he sat down, adjusting his mic. People have been moved by your honesty. But tonight, there's someone who asked to join us. He frowned slightly. Someone? The host smiled. Yes. Someone who's watched your journey closely, and who has something to say to you. Before he could respond, the studio door opened. The crowd gasped. And there she was, Demet Özdemir. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged, alive with unspoken words. Can's eyes softened immediately. Demet, he whispered, almost not believing it. She smiled, a little nervously. You didn't think I'd let you take all the spotlight again, did you? The audience chuckled softly, but beneath the light humor, emotion filled the room. The host gestured for her to sit beside him. Cameras zoomed in as the two finally faced each other for the first time in years, live, unfiltered, and raw. I watched your interview, Demet began, her tone gentle. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't see the actor everyone talks about. I saw the man I once knew, the one who used to disappear for hours just to protect someone else's peace. Can's jaw tightened slightly, his eyes glistening. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to carry it. That promise, it wasn't mine to share. I know, she said softly. And now that I do understand, I'm not angry. Just proud. The host smiled knowingly. It seems this story wasn't just about Sara or your father's promise. It's about reconnecting with the truth, and maybe with each other. Can turned to Demet, his expression tender but steady. When I said I kept my promise, I wasn't just talking about Sara. I was talking about everything I left unfinished, every word I couldn't say to the people who mattered. You were one of them. The audience fell silent. Demet blinked back tears. Then maybe this is your second chance to finish what you started. Can's voice dropped to a whisper. If you'll let me. She smiled, this time without hesitation. I just did. The host, visibly emotional, spoke softly. The world has seen many confessions, but none quite like this, a truth born from loyalty, pain, and courage. The audience rose in applause as the camera slowly zoomed out, the two sitting side by side, smiling through tears, not actors now but two people stripped of fame, stripped of distance, finally free of everything unsaid. Outside, the headlines were already forming, world-shocked face screaming in fear fire the reunion no one expected, Can and Demet face each other live. But for them, it wasn't a headline. It was healing. After the broadcast, Can and Demet stepped out into the cool Istanbul night. Away from the noise, they walked quietly along the street. For the first time in years, there was no tension, just peace. Demet looked at him and said softly, "Your father would be proud of you." Ken smiled. "So would yours." They walked in silence for a moment before he added, "I think we both finally did what we were meant to do." Demet nodded. "Tell the truth?" He chuckled. "And stop running from it." They laughed together, quietly, warmly, as the city lights flickered around them. The world might still be talking, but for once, they didn't care. And as they reached the end of the street, the wind carried the faint echoes of the applause from the studio. It sounded distant, like a closing chapter. For them, it was not an ending, but a beginning built on truth, loyalty, and the kind of love that doesn't fade, even after years of silence. Fade out.